Welcome back to my kitchen. So it is the beginning of the month, which usually means I have a lot of restocking to do here in my kitchen. I do a pretty big restock at the beginning of the month, and then I'll do smaller ones throughout the beginnings of each week. This week, it's 4th of July, tomorrow actually, so I have a few things to make for a party that we're going to. So that requires hard boiling some eggs and making mayo. I also have a watermelon that I'm bringing, so I'm gonna cut that up, which isn't really a pantry restock, but I'm gonna include it anyways. I'm gonna make mayo, and I'm pulling out a cold egg, and technically it's not supposed to be cold, it's supposed to be room temperature. So I'm just gonna put it in a glass of warm water, and that helps it reach room temperature a lot faster. But you're probably going to notice a few repeats from the last pantry restock I did just a few weeks ago. I have yogurt that I have going here. In the Instant Pot, I did a gallon of milk this time around. We go through it so quickly. I also have some granola that I'm going to make. I am going to show you what I do, but I won't include the recipe or anything. I'll put it in the description. I'm gonna make it a little bit differently this time around. I want to change up the flavors. I want to try making a chocolate granola because I think that would be really delicious. And I've never tried that before. But yeah, I thought I would take you along, and I want to be honest with you guys. I'm not gonna make new things for my pantry restocks just to keep things entertaining and interesting. I'm showing you exactly, this is what I make. Usually on a monthly basis. I make it very frequently. These things are on repeat in my kitchen. I'm not gonna just start making things that I wouldn't normally make just for the sake of a video. I apologize if you've seen these things before. And I'm sure as I plan on making more of these videos, you'll probably continue to see me repeating my recipes, but they're tried and true. This is actually what we eat here in our home. So yeah, come along with me as we restock my kitchen. So I'm going to start off by making some brown sugar today. I only just recently learned what exactly brown sugar is, and that is just molasses and white sugar. Not sure if you've ever heard the saying, slower than molasses in January, but there's a reason that saying is a thing. This stuff is very, very sticky. You're gonna need a spoon to scoop it out of the jar. But anyways, I don't measure, I just eyeball it until the consistency feels right. I prefer a darker brown sugar, as I'm sure you can tell. But I've also found that homemade brown sugar actually stores better than the store-bought stuff. It doesn't get hard and crusty nearly as quickly. So not only is it easier on your bank book, but it's also easier to use and store as well. I'm also going to go ahead and quickly make up some mayo for the deviled eggs that we'll be making later. I'm going to start with a room temperature egg, a half a teaspoon mustard, a teaspoon and a half of lemon juice, almost a teaspoon of salt, and 1 cup avocado oil. And then using an immersion blender, I like to start at the bottom and slowly pull the immersion blender up until everything is combined and takes on the right consistency. I've stored this in the fridge for up to a week, but I think most people recommend only a few days. I like to do the old sniff test to see if anything has gone bad. Mayo never lasts long in this house. I don't think it's ever made it past a week, so... Next up is actually one of my favorite snacks, and that is homemade gummies or jello, depending on how much gelatin you put in. But I always just use up the whole jug of juice for this kind. That's about 8 cups. So you'll take 2 cups of that juice and set it aside, then add the remaining into a pot to heat up. I think that's about 6 cups of juice that I had left over. But into that 2 cups you set aside, gradually add half a cup of beef gelatin while continuously stirring until it's all well combined. Then you'll let that sit for about 5 minutes until the juice has bloomed and thickened. And at that point, your juice on the stove should be heated through, so go ahead and combine the 2 cups of bloom juice with the 6 cups of juice on the stove, and then just stir it until it's all dissolved. This is optional, but this would be the time to add any sweetener, and I usually do add a sweetener. I didn't do it one time and it just kind of tasted bland. There wasn't a whole lot of flavor. It wasn't bad, just not extremely flavorful. But I usually do about a 1/4 cup of honey. Once that's combined and dissolved, you'll go ahead and pour it into a pan that's greased with coconut oil. Then it'll get put into the fridge for about 2 or 3 hours until they've thickened and set. You'll see in a bit. It's kind of like homemade fruit snacks. So I am now moving on to making my monthly batch of granola, and like I said earlier, I wanted to try a chocolate granola, which is something I haven't tried. So I'm starting with my usual base ingredients, which always consists of some sort of nut. This time around I'm doing a 1/2 cup of almonds and a 1/4 cup of pistachios, and pulsing them until they're in fairly fine chunks. Then into the mixing bowl they go, along with 3 cups of rolled oats, a 1/4 cup cocoa powder, 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, 2 tablespoons flaxseed meal, 1/2 cup coconut flakes unsweetened, and a teaspoon of salt. And then while that's mixing, I'm going to go ahead and melt 1/2 cup of coconut oil in the microwave before adding a 1/3 cup of maple syrup and a teaspoon vanilla extract and mixing that all together. They won't completely combine, but do the best you can. Then that'll get added into your dry ingredients in the mixer, and just mix that until everything is well coated before pressing that into a parchment-lined baking sheet. And then that's going to go in the oven for about 40 minutes or so at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Just keep an eye on it. It varies by oven. Sometimes I'll crank up the heat a little bit if I want to cut down on my baking time. Other times I will lower it and then be sure to mix it halfway through to get a more crunchy granola. So now my yogurt is done. I know it looks runny, but I promise once it cooled in the fridge, it thickened up. I probably should have strained it. It was still a little bit runnier than I would like, especially for the silicone food pouches that I get for my son. It was just a little too runny. It would tend to drip out. But anyways, it still tasted delicious. My son still devoured it without a problem. But yeah, I poured those into some jars and gave my Instant Pot insert a good clean so I could get to boiling the eggs. And making hard-boiled eggs in the Instant Pot is the only way to do it. You'll see later on just how easy they peel when they're cooked this way. No other method has allowed me to peel eggs as easily as cooking them in the Instant Pot does. But you'll add a trivet into your Instant Pot. Then layer in your eggs. I only did a single layer, but you can stack them. It doesn't matter if they're touching or anything. Then you'll add just enough water to fill the bottom so that it's just barely not touching the bottom of the trivet. Plop that into your Instant Pot and set it to high pressure for 5 minutes, and once it's done, let it naturally release for 5 minutes. Then release the pressure and remove them into an ice bath. You'll see me doing that later on. And then next up is a recipe I actually made myself. I'm very proud of it. I think these are so delicious, and that is sourdough crackers. These are more of a savory cracker. But yeah, to a bowl, you're going to add 2 cups of sourdough starter fed, and then you'll add in 2 cups all-purpose flour, about a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of some dried herbs. I usually do a mix of rosemary and thyme. This time around, I only had rosemary, and I made sure to put it in my food processor and grind it up so it was really nice and fine. That makes a big difference. If you leave it in just the big chunks, it tends to tear at the dough when you go to roll it out later. So yeah, make sure it's nice and finely ground. And then you'll also add in 8 tablespoons of softened melted butter. It doesn't really matter. And then you're gonna pop that on your mixer with the dough hook and just knead that until it's really nice and smooth. This takes about 5 to 6 minutes. Also, I'm sorry if you hear babbling in the background. I've got my little daughter here next to me and she is very talkative today. But anyways, once that's done, I go ahead and I just wrap it up in some plastic wrap, and then this goes in the fridge overnight, and then I will pull it out in the morning or sometime the next day, and it'll sit on my counter at least 3 hours. This helps it soften a little bit and become more pliable, easier to work with. This hack will save your life if you like to make homemade crackers. Get yourself a pasta roller. I like the one that attaches to the KitchenAid. It's not KitchenAid name brand. It's some off-brand. Got it on Amazon. And this thing is a lifesaver. I just roll this through until I get it to the thickness that I like. On my machine, I roll it to a 3 or a 4. This saves so much time and so much energy. You don't have to spend a ton of time with the rolling pin and trying to get them even. This is such a great hack. Please let me know if you try this and if it works as well for you as it does for me. I love this trick. But yeah, you're gonna get those rolled out into sheets and put it on a parchment lined pan. And then I like to brush some avocado oil on the top. I will poke some holes into them so they don't bubble and balloon. I just use a fork, and then you're gonna go ahead and just cut those. Just use a pizza knife. That makes it really nice and simple. And then I'll go ahead and sprinkle some Himalayan salt on top. Alright, and my eggs are now done. I let them release. Then I just remove them into an ice bath, and here you can see just how easily they peel. These are so easy. The shells just fall right off. It's amazing. Yep, you can see my crackers have come out there, nice and golden brown, very crisp. They just snap apart, exactly how I like crackers. Nobody likes rubbery, bendy crackers. You want a nice snap to them. And it's been a few hours now since I put my gummies into the fridge, so I go ahead and fold those out and slice them into cubes. I would love to get a mold, like a cute little gummy bear mold for these, but I haven't done it yet. Cubes work. They turned out great. They were very yummy. And I pulled my granola out of the oven and I allowed it to cool on some cooling racks before moving it into an airtight container. I keep it for about a month and it keeps just fine in the pantry. I've never had any trouble with it. And I actually ended up making my deviled eggs the following day on the 4th of July, right before we went to the party that we were going to. And I'll include the recipe down below in case you guys want to make them exactly how I make them. I usually eyeball the ingredients anyways. Oh yeah, another tip, immersion blender works great for making the deviled egg filling. And these are such a good summer snack. I always forget about deviled eggs, and like I could have put away this whole dish by myself in an afternoon. It wouldn't have been hard. They're so good. And then as you can see, I also made some more sourdough pancakes, and I know this really shouldn't count as part of a pantry restock, but I did. I went ahead and sliced up this watermelon. I've seen people use the cookie scoops before, the scoops that you use for cookie dough, to scoop out the watermelon and do it that way, but it's very time consuming. I always call it deboning my watermelon. Doesn't really make any sense, but this is my process for portioning watermelon into easier bite-sized pieces. I want to thank you guys for joining me today and coming along as I get some more food stocked into my kitchen, but I will see you all next week. Take care.